Whilst Antoine Dupont was sidelined through injury, he didn't fade quietly into the background or disappear into the anonymity of rehab, which has never really been his way. Instead, he reappeared somewhere altogether different. Dupont surfaced alongside Danny Khezzar, the young French chef whose rapid ascent, from the kitchens of the Ritz to Michelin-starred Bayview and mainstream acclaim via Top Chef, has been built on a rare blend of classical discipline, creative confidence, and a willingness to challenge accepted norms that on the surface, it was a neat cultural crossover. Elite scrum half meets modern culinary disruptor. But it lingered longer than most such collaborations because it felt oddly revealing. Khezzar is a chef who knows the classical canon intimately and respects it deeply, but also understands that reverence alone does not move cuisine forward. Dupont, watching rugby from the outside while injured, seemed instinctively drawn to that same philosophy. The idea that evolution doesn't come from rejection, but from knowing precisely when and how to layer something new. What looked like novelty felt more like metaphor. Because if Fabien Galthie has been cooking from the great classical playbook of French rugby, he has done so with genuine mastery. Structured, disciplined, and unapologetically rooted in fundamentals. The base has been carefully prepared. Margins tightened. Excess stripped away. Under his stewardship, France became reliable without becoming dull, powerful without becoming predictable, and emotionally resilient in a way that had so often eluded them. And yet, mastery has a habit of inviting curiosity. For all their quality, this generational French side have underachieved. The dish still works. It just no longer overwhelms. Between 2020 and 2023, France were ferociously consistent, emotionally aligned, brutally accurate in defense. They strangled opponents not just through physicality, but through collective clarity, an almost shared refusal to fracture. Line speed was relentless, connections were tight, and the scramble instinctive. Control wasn't enforced. It was assumed. France today remained very good, but they are no longer quite that airtight. They unravel occasionally, not dramatically or catastrophically, but just enough for it to matter. Defensive connections creak when tempo spikes. Points leak in ways they simply didn't a few years ago. Control, once instinctive, now sometimes needs to be reasserted. That isn't decline in the blunt sense. It's the reality of a side moving through a cycle, facing opponents who have learned how to stress their system, and managing a squad that is subtly but meaningfully evolving through age, form, and, critically, injury. Alongside the established core, a new generation is pushing through. Players like Michael Gillard and Oscar Jago bring energy, athleticism, and ambition, but they are still learning the rhythms and compromises of test rugby. They stretch the system, test its edges, and occasionally expose it, not through recklessness, but through inexperience. That is not a problem to be fixed so much as a phase to be managed. The foundation remains strong. Charles Ollivon's calm authority, Francois' cross-connective work, and Gregory Aldrit's power and presence continue to anchor the side. Thomas Ramos provides flair and emotion from the back, but crucially fuses it with control and clarity. These players don't dominate headlines. They stabilize narratives, ensuring that expression around them remains grounded. The question for Galthie is not whether to abandon that foundation, but whether it is now strong enough to support more variation layered on top of it. Look at Bordeaux-Bègles, and you see a version of French rugby that feels subtly different rather than radically opposed. Their attacking shape is not chaos masquerading as ambition. It is layered, fluid, and intelligently spaced. At its heart, Matthieu Jalibert plays with a calm assurance that disguises just how quickly he processes information, holding defenders just long enough before releasing others into space. What makes UBB compelling is not flair for its own sake, but clarity of a prescribed and subscribed style. Players move because they expect the ball, not because they hope for it. That is not a rejection of structure. It is an evolution of it. Toulouse, of course, remained a reference point. Even in absence, Dupont defines tempo and standard. Toulouse rugby sharpens decisions, demands precision, and punishes hesitation. La Rochelle, meanwhile, provide the ballast. The reminder that when space disappears, power still matters. The opportunity for Galthie is not to choose between these identities, but to compose them deliberately. And this is where Jalibert becomes pivotal, that he is not the alternative option or contingency plan. He is a synthesizer. Like Khezzar in the kitchen, Jalibert understands the base well enough to introduce contrast without destabilizing the whole. He doesn't tear up the script, he annotates it, changing texture and rhythm rather than direction. That if Dupont is the head chef, setting standards and tempo, then Jalibert is the creative partner who knows when to add spice and when restraint is the smarter choice. In a France side that no longer relies quite so heavily on defensive suffocation, that ability to control ambiguity becomes increasingly valuable. Modern international rugby is unforgiving. Defensive systems are smarter, line speed is relentless, and decision-making windows are shrinking. Breaking elite teams down now requires ambiguity, the capacity to make defenders hesitate, to present multiple credible threats at once. France have the players to do this. What they're deciding now is whether to trust them fully within the framework they have built. That is why Dupont's collaboration with Khezzar resonates. It reflects a mindset rather than a moment. You don't abandon classical methods because they stop working. You evolve because you've mastered them. France do not need reinvention. They need nuance, consistency, clarity of style, a willingness to season what is already excellent, to trust intelligence over habit, and to allow a new generation to express itself without losing the essence of what made them formidable. IT is not a betrayal of tradition, but an evolution worthy of it, precisely what Khezzar has done for modern French cuisine.